The scar on my chest feels itchy, like a spider crawling under my skin. I drag my fingers across it, the raised line a cruel reminder. Then I remember why it's there. A single tear rolls down my cheek, and I brush it away angrily. No more crying. It doesn't solve anything. I stand up, feeling dizzy for a moment, but my headache won't keep me down. There's laundry to do, always laundry. I throw open the closet and grab his suit jacket, ready to toss it in the basket. Something falls out of the pocket, crinkled and half hidden. My fingers tremble a bit as I pick it up. A condom wrapper. My pulse quickens. But it could be old, right? I know I should just throw it away and forget about it. But the smell, that damn cheap perfume gives me a headache. It's the same one as last time, and the time before that. His excuses are starting to blur together. Late night at the office. Gotta go. Urgent business trip. Liar. He'll be home soon, and I need to know. Honey. My voice is shaky as I hold up the wrapper. What the hell is this? He stares, eyes wide for a second before his face twists into annoyance. Don't start this again. That's probably from ages ago. You're always snooping. His words sting. Ages ago? It smells fresh, Tom. And what about last week? Remember your business trip? I just got the text message from that fancy restaurant you guys went to. Real professional dinner you had there. His mouth sets in a hard line, and he storms past me, knocking my shoulder. Jesus. You're so paranoid. Grow up and stop imagining things. He slams the door behind him, and I'm left standing there, the wrapper crumpled in my fist. A week later, it's not my imagination playing tricks on me. The doctor's voice is muffled, like there's cotton in my ears. Breast cancer. Stage 2. It's treatable, but I don't hear the rest. I see Tom's face, the flash of. Is that disgust? Am I imagining that too? No. His shoulders stiffen. His eyes look away like he can't even bear to look at me. The world keeps moving. Appointments get made. Procedures are scheduled. His concern feels like an act. Can't miss another day of work. He mutters when they explain I'll need a double mastectomy. He barely touches me afterward. The sight of my body now repulsive to him. The bandages come off a week after surgery, and I almost don't want to look. Tom does though, and the scowl that crosses his face is like a punch to the gut. He hasn't touched me properly since. Just quick, half-hearted hugs like I'm made of glass. Fragile. Disgusting. More like. My hair's falling out in clumps. I decided to just go ahead and shave it. Feels weird. The razor buzzing against my scalp. When I look in the mirror, I don't even recognize myself. I look sick, and tired, and old. Tom keeps dropping hints. There are wigs, for after treatment. He makes it sound like wearing a wig would somehow make me normal again. He's been extra grumpy. Slamming doors, mumbling to himself all the time. I get it. The whole thing's been hard. But the way he calls me, patient, instead of my name, it makes my skin crawl. Then last night, I was finally falling asleep and I reached for him like I used to, just wanting a little warmth. He flinched, scooting away and mumbling something about not wanting to wake me up. Lies. It hurt so damn much in that moment, more than the chemo or the surgery or anything. Support group was my saving grace. The women there understood. Some of them bald too, some have their scars like me. But Fran, she was different. There was a spark in her eyes, like she was alive, not just surviving. She made me laugh in a way I forgot how. We started meeting for coffee after group, then going for walks. One time, she brought me those fancy chocolates from the shop downtown. It felt like I was a real person again, not just a cancer patient. My life was this narrow little tunnel, treatments, feeling sick, worrying about the kids, and Fran made it feel wide open somehow. Then Tom's dad died. Suddenly, unpacking his bags, taking care of the kids alone. I had chemo the day of the funeral, not that he cared. He just yelled at me for being selfish, that I was ruining things for everyone. Honestly, part of me was relieved I didn't have to go. The chemo made me feel like crap, and I knew I'd be dragging my feet, being a downer at the funeral. He didn't deserve to have his perfect little family picture ruined by me. The hospital smells like bleach and stale coffee. I wish I'd brought a book or something, but that last chemo session left my brain feeling like mush. The chairs too hard, the drip too slow. It all feels like some kind of twisted torture they say for sick women. That's when I see her. Fran. Standing there at the doorway, a bright scarf wrapped around her head. She smiles, and it's like a wave of relief washes over me. I hadn't dared to ask her to come, but she's here anyway. Hey, she says, don't look so gloomy. I come prepared. She flashes a magazine and a bag of snacks at me. Even through the haze, I manage a shaky laugh. Those next few hours are a blur. Fran sits by my side the whole time, chatting about mindless stuff to take my mind off the needle and the poison they're pumping into me. I close my eyes at one point, just to rest them, and she doesn't even take it as a hint to leave like everyone else would. The worst comes later. Once they've unhooked me and sent me home, my stomach twists and turns, and I just know what's coming. Fran doesn't flinch. She holds the trash can steady as I heave, and brings me a cold washcloth for my face afterward. I'm shaking too much to even do that for myself. You okay? She asks, and there's no pity in her voice, just a quiet concern that makes me want to cry all over again. I nod, but it feels like another lie. Take off your wig, she says suddenly, and I'm so startled I just stare at her. It's probably itchy anyway, and you're just going to sweat right through it. Before my brain can think of any excuses, she's already gently lifting the wig off. I see her eyes widen for a second, but she doesn't say a word. Just takes a damp cloth and wipes my bald head. You're beautiful, she whispers. I feel the tears start to well up, stupid tears of gratitude, and she pulls me into a hug. It's the first real hug I've gotten in so long. You want to watch a stupid movie or something? She asks later. I can't summon the energy to argue. She makes some popcorn and brings in a stack of DVDs. We end up watching some ridiculous rom-com, the kind I would have hated before all this. But Fran keeps making these goofy comments that make me laugh through the nausea. This guy's an idiot, she whispers at one point, and something about her tone makes me look over. She's holding a joint between her fingers. It takes me a moment to process the offer. I haven't done that in forever. I manage to mumble. It might help with the tummy troubles, she says with a shrug, and a good laugh can't hurt either. The room smells like Fran's perfume mixed with the faint scent of weed. My head feels foggy, still spinning a bit. We ended up talking half the night, about dumb stuff mostly, but it felt good to talk to someone, to feel normal for a few hours. The kisses happened gradually, laughter turning into lingering glances, a brush of hands on the couch, and suddenly, her lips were on mine. It felt good. Not like Tom's kisses, which had become stiff and formal. Fran's kiss was soft, and tasted of freedom somehow, of wanting something, not just needing it. Then she pulled back. Not like this, she murmured. You're not. You're not in your right mind, and I won't take advantage. Her eyes were soft but serious. I wanted to protest. No, wait. She was right. The chemo had left me shaky and weak, and the joint. I was vulnerable. Fran saw that, even when I couldn't admit it to myself. We fell asleep on the couch, tangled up together like when my kids were little, and would climb into bed with me. I woke up feeling weird, a mix of excitement and absolute dread. The memories of the night came flooding back. The kiss, the way Fran looked at me before she fell asleep, and suddenly, it wasn't just about feeling good in the moment anymore. It was about wanting more. The next morning, I kept busy. I cleaned the kitchen like a madwoman, scrubbing until my hands were raw, all to avoid looking at the phone in the little bubble that said she'd texted. I kept thinking about the kids. They'd be back in a hole and hide. Guilt gnawed at me every time I laughed with them. Every bedtime story I read. They didn't deserve this mess, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. Sometimes, I catch my reflection in the mirror and see a stranger. I saw Fran's eyes looking back at me sometimes, and it thrilled and terrified me all at once. One morning, I couldn't stand it anymore. I texted her, the words spilling out of me like a confession. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have. It was a mistake, but I trailed off, not sure how to finish the thought. I needed to see her, but I knew I shouldn't. I knew nothing good could come of it. Every time my phone buzzes, it feels like a jolt of electricity. It's always Fran, checking up, leaving sweet little messages like nothing happened. At first, I read them. Then, I just started swiping the notifications away without opening them. It felt like a form of self-preservation. The kids are finally back. They run to me, full of chattering questions about Papa's funeral. Every enthusiastic hug feels like another betrayal, like there's a space growing between us that I created. I force a smile, the same one I've been practicing on myself in the mirror every morning, and say all the right mom things. That afternoon, when the kids are doing their homework, I sneak off to the bathroom. My hands are shaking when I unlock my phone, a mix of fear and longing washing over me. Fran sent a picture, her with a friend at the coffee shop, bright smile like nothing's amiss. Like my silence doesn't scream volumes. A part of me aches for that normalcy, that life without guilt and lies. Tom gets home that evening, tired-eyed but doing his best to put on a good dad show. He hugs the kids, goes over their math problems, and sits down to dinner like a normal family picture. I barely eat, my stomach clenched with disgust. His touch used to be a comfort. Now, every accidental brush of his hand makes me want to crawl out of my skin. Later, he climbs into bed beside me, expecting. It makes me want to scream. He smells like the cheap perfume, the one from his affairs. All I can think about is Fran. The way her hands felt on my skin, the tenderness in her eyes. Not tonight. I managed to choke out. It's the first time I've ever refused him. His face twists in irritation. He's not used to it. Okay. You're still feeling rough, I get it, he mutters, but I can tell he's annoyed. He rolls away, and the relief I feel is tainted with shame and a strange sort of thrill. That night, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling. I see Fran's face, then Tom's, the accusations in his eyes when he finds out. I don't know how much longer I can keep this charade up, the guilt and the secret burning through me. I miss Fran. I miss myself. But I feel stuck, trapped in a life I've built on a foundation of lies and betrayal, and now there's just more to add to the pile. I should have known it would come to this. The stupid red hair, a single strand clinging to the seat of his car. I didn't even try to make up some excuse. Maybe the kids tracked something in. He just stood there, staring at it with this cold look in his eyes. What is this? He demanded, his voice dangerously low. It's the same tone he's used on me 100 times, questioning, accusatory. This time, though, there's something different behind it. Fear. Maybe? You know what it is, I replied. I surprised myself. My voice barely shook, and this small defiance ignited something in me. He didn't yell like I expected. Instead, he went pale and started sputtering. Is this some sick joke? You think this is funny? No, Tom, I said, my voice growing stronger. You think it's funny? Sleeping around all these years, while I took care of the kids, while I went through hell with cancer. And you thought you could just get away with it? He stared at me, dumbfounded. I hadn't planned this, hadn't imagined a confrontation like this. But the words poured out of me. I told him everything. About finding the rappers, about the texts, and about how his touch repulsed me after I saw the way he looked at other women. His face twisted into a mixture of shock and rage. He started shouting, denying the affairs at first, then blaming me. Look at yourself. With your bald head and those awful scars. You think I want that? His cruelty stung, but oddly, it didn't hurt as much as it used to. So go ahead, Tom, I said, my voice shaking slightly, but determined. You'll all you want, but I'm done. Done with you. Done with feeling sorry for myself. Done with staying in this pathetic marriage. He stood there, eyes blazing with fury, and for the first time in years, I didn't shrink under his gaze. We stared at each other across the kitchen, both of us breathing heavily. You'll regret this, he spat out. Maybe, I replied, but I won't regret having a life free from you. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him, and I stood there, shaking, exhilarated, and deeply afraid. All at the same time. I had no idea what was going to happen next, but I'd finally taken a stand, and it felt both terrifying and liberating in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Support group meetings used to be unbearable. I'd sit there feeling like an imposter, with my fake smile plastered on. Now, with Fran beside me, it was different. The women there saw through me, knew the cracks in my facade were real, but they didn't judge. It felt like a lifeline in those early weeks. Fran and I, it was undefined. We'd go for long walks, coffee dates that stretched into evenings, movies on the couch with our knees pressed together. She felt like the first real friend I'd had in ages, someone who knew my ugliest parts and didn't turn away. Sometimes we'd talk for hours about my marriage, how it had crumbled. Other days, we wouldn't mention Tom at all. I'd start opening up about other stuff, the kids, surviving cancer, dreams I'd tucked away long ago. There were moments, on my worst days, where I'd crave more than friendship. Aching, desperate moments when I just wanted to sink into her touch and forget all about the mess I'd made of my life. But Fran never crossed that line. I don't know if it was out of respect for me or something else, but it kept things safe in a way that I probably needed. My energy came in bursts. Some days, I'd clean the house with a ferocity that hadn't existed for years and need to purge the past from every corner. Others, I'd just curl up in bed, drained, staring at the ceiling. Fran was there during both, offering a helping hand or giving quiet company. One afternoon, she handed me an old notebook. "You were always such a writer," she said with a gentle smile. Thought maybe this could help. Something inside me flickered. I started with little things, just jotting down what I felt each day. Then, I found myself writing about Tom, about the lies, the betrayal, the moments I'd shrunk myself down just to make him comfortable. Putting my thoughts into words felt like setting them free. Fran listened as I read parts aloud, eyes burning with tears I was too proud to let fall. Sometimes, she'd just nod, offering a gentle squeeze of my hand. My lawyer called. Tom was playing dirty, the fight over assets getting uglier. "He'll give in," she assured me. "We just need to be relentless." After the call, a wave of fury washed over me. I sat at my computer, and a blog idea started brewing. I could share my story, not just the cancer part, but the whole messy truth. A way to help others, to take back power over my own life, to show him. Well, to show him it wouldn't destroy me. My kids looked at me like I was a stranger. They'd spent the summer with Tom, and he'd been busy filling their heads with his version of the truth. How I was the one who tore the family apart, how I'd abandoned them. Their eyes would fill with this strange mix of pity and resentment. It cut deeper than any of Tom's insults. Fran tried to help. "They're kids," she'd say. "They're hurting too, just in a different way." I knew she was right, but my heart would ache, feeling this distance between myself and the children I'd carried. It was almost a relief when they'd go back to stay with their dad. The blog was gaining traction. My words resonated with people, mostly women. Messages poured in from strangers thanking me for speaking my truth, for helping them feel less alone. I felt a surge of bitter satisfaction knowing Tom had probably seen it, evidence of my life continuing without him, stronger for it. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. It was my daughter. Her voice was small, younger than it should have been. "Mom, can we talk?" That night, we sat on her bed. I laid it all out. The affairs, the way he'd made me feel, the reasons why I couldn't stay. She listened, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you say anything before?" she asked. Her question felt like an accusation. I was scared, I confessed, and ashamed. "I wanted to protect you." We talked until the birds started chirping outside. It wasn't a clean, perfect reconciliation. The hurt was still there. But a sliver of understanding appeared, something we could build on. One day, my lawyer called. "We got it," she said. "He finally caved. It's a fair settlement." She rattled off figures that meant nothing to me, only that the financial stranglehold he'd been using was gone. I finally confronted Tom face to face. It wasn't the dramatic showdown I'd imagined in my angrier moments. Instead, there was a cold sort of calm as I laid out everything. The way he'd underestimated me, the power shift I now held. There was a defeated look in his eyes, a realization that the game was over. The day I sold the house, it felt like shedding an old skin. Fran offered to drive me to the airport. "France?" she suggested with a hopeful grin. "Or maybe somewhere warmer." I kissed her cheek. "Maybe later," I said, but I wasn't sure. Right now, all I needed was space, a fresh start somewhere far away. I began looking at apartments online, picturing smaller, brighter spaces, filled with books I'd finally have time to read, hobbies I could do just for the joy of it. For the first time in forever, the choices were all mine. The new city held a certain promise. Sea air and bustling cafes replaced the sameness of suburbia. My apartment was small, but the window seat was perfect for reading and watching the world go by. The loneliness was a new kind, intentional. Mornings were spent walking along the shoreline, giving my thoughts room to breathe. Some days, the past still weighed heavy, but more often, I'd find myself musing about what to do next. Volunteering at the animal shelter filled those empty spaces. A trembling kitten in my arms felt more fulfilling than anything in ages. Fran texted often. I missed her, but a space was necessary, a chance to find myself outside of others. The blog remained my focus. I interviewed other survivors, amplifying their voices. A comment stood out. You gave me the voice I didn't know I had. It fueled me. An email arrived, an invitation to speak at a women's conference. Me? Public speaking? My ring's been off more than on lately. It's a slippery slope once you take that first step, you know? That thrill, the stolen glances. I thought I could handle it. But now, looking in the mirror, I don't recognize the woman staring back. Trouble is, he's not just a fling anymore, and my whole world's about to blow up. I pull on the silky black dress that schemes a little too high, shows a little too much skin. Not my usual style, but who am I these days, anyway? He had liked it when we went shopping last week. Makes you look so mysterious. He had breathed, eyes lingering longer than they should. Guilt squirms again, but it's mixed with anticipation now. A twisted kind of anticipation. I grab a taxi, rehearsing excuses in my head. My best friend's text still sits, unanswered. Maybe I'll call her on the way home, or pretend my phone's battery died. Some half-formed story I haven't fully hashed out yet. All I can focus on is him, his smile, his hands on the steering wheel last week as he dropped me home. The bar is dim, the kind of place with overpriced cocktails and underdressed waitresses. My eyes scan the room, and there he is. He looks up, eyes widening a fraction, a smile playing on his lips. A jolt runs through me, and I have to look away. He's not just a boss anymore, not just a work connection. He's this thing I can't seem to put a name to. You look beautiful, he says, and God, my knees feel weak. It's wrong, all wrong. But the thrill overpowers everything else. Sorry, I'm a bit late, I lie. I'm not late. I was painstakingly applying makeup, changing outfits 3 times, agonizing over whether I was doing the right thing or spiraling headfirst into the biggest mistake of my life. He orders us martinis, and my pulse thuds in my ears. One drink won't hurt, right? Just a drink, a conversation, an electric night with someone who isn't the man snoring in my bed at home. Someone who looks at me with sparks in his eyes and makes me feel like myself again. Whatever that means these days. My hand trembles on the doorknob, the house looming ominous in the darkness. He's probably watching TV, maybe already drifted off. I need a shower, to wash away the sin of him. Not the whiskey, not the lingering warmth of his fingers on my skin, but the betrayal, the lies that hang heavy in the space between us. The water beats down, but nothing can scrub away the guilt. And yet, something shifted inside me, a defiance. It's ugly, beautiful, and entirely wrong. But there it is, thrumming under my skin. Morning brings a throbbing headache and an unshakable nausea. But it's the weight of my dissection that's the hardest to bear. My husband smiles at me over breakfast, and I almost choke on my coffee. It's unbearable. The ease of my lie last night sits like a lump of lead in my stomach. He heads out, and a flicker of panic grips me. What am I doing? How did this become my life? I see my best friend's text from yesterday, still waiting for an answer. I should call her, tell her everything, beg for forgiveness. Instead, I find myself looking at his phone. Stupid, reckless, desperate. There has to be a sign, something, anything to explain this intoxicating rush and this crushing guilt clawing its way through me. His texts are mundane. Business stuff, a joke with his buddy. Just the normal hum of everyday life. Except there at the bottom, his most recent exchange. Can't wait to see you tonight. No name, no context, but my breath catches. It's like a punch to the gut. He's seeing someone else too. My fingers tighten around the phone. That stupid text, can't wait to see you tonight, burns in my brain. Rage and a sick sort of relief twist through me. I'm not the only monster here. My marriage, this farce we've been playing it, feels even more hollow now. Work is torture. He's there, so close yet impossibly distant. I catch fleeting glimpses of him, a touch of his hand on a coworker's shoulder, the way he laughs at something across the room. My heart stings. I want to scream, to grab him, to expose this whole rotten mess. But mostly, I want to escape into his arms again. Ridiculous. Pathetic. My phone buzzes, his wife's name popping up on the screen. A picture of them, smiling at a beach with their two perfectly dressed kids. I feel nauseous. I stare at the photo, studying her oblivious smile. Does she know? Is she playing just as dirty a game as we are? My husband comes home with plans for a romantic weekend, a quaint B&B tucked in the countryside. It's almost laughable. Almost. I agree. A tight smile plastered on my face. Each life feels heavier than the last, a twisted weight pressing down on me. The next day, my daughter's teacher, the wise Mrs. Evans, corners me after class. Her usually warm face is pinched, concerned. Is everything all right? You seem a bit distracted lately. I want to crumble, confess everything right then and there. But instead, I force a smile. Just a lot going on. I mumble, and practically run from the room. Lying has become second nature. I don't even recognize myself anymore. He surprises me with a bouquet of lilies. Not my favorite, too fancy, but the gesture throws me off balance. For a second, a sickening wave of guilt almost washes the thrill away. I push it back down. He's trying, late, maybe, but trying. It makes the lies harder to swallow. His brother, Ben, comes over for a casual dinner. I've always liked him, funny, laid back. But now when he jokes about my husband's cluelessness, it lands with a sickening thud. Does he know? Is there a hint of suspicion in his eyes? The paranoia prickles my skin, and I laugh a little too loud, too shrill. The next day, a stupid argument with my husband over something trivial explodes out of proportion. The resentment, a bitter poison building up from the tangle of lies, spills out. He looks surprised, hurt, but I can't take it back. The words hang in the air, heavy and accusatory. A glimpse of the ugliness this has turned me into. Later, his wife texts. An innocent message? Coffee soon? Panic flares in my stomach. A joke that might not be a joke. A test. Or maybe she's as oblivious as my husband. I make up a lame excuse, promising to reschedule, my heart pounding. Then it happens. The supermarket, of all places. I round an aisle, and there he is. Our carts almost collide. His eyes widen, then flash with that reckless fire. We both recover quickly, making small talk about frozen peas and bread prices. But that moment, the charge in the air between us, is like gasoline to my dangerous, foolish heart. The thrill is terrifying, and irresistible. The close call happens when my husband gets up for a glass of water. His laptop, open on the kitchen counter, flashes with a new work email. Panic surges through me. He's just steps away, but I lunge forward and slam the screen shut with clumsy, fumbling fingers. My heart thuds like a drum roll in my ears. He could have seen everything. This is insanity. He's home early the next day with roses, red and velvety, a grand gesture unlike him. The guilt almost chokes me. It feels like the walls are closing in, secrets piling up like unbearable weight. This can't last much longer. Finally, I break a little under the pressure. My best friend notices my distracted glances, the way I flinch at every unexpected noise. Cornered, I tell her half-truths. About the excitement, the flirting, but nothing about the meetings, the nights. It's a relief and a further violation at the same time. A text from an unknown number makes my blood turn to ice. I know what you're doing. My pulse races. Is someone watching us? Someone who knows about him? A flash of blackmail, of exposure, twists a cold knot inside me. All the risks I've so carelessly ignored suddenly loom large and terrifying. I sit motionless for hours, phone clutched in my sweaty hand. Is it a bluff? Should I reply? The not knowing is the worst part. It's like poison seeping into every corner of my life. Later, I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Dark circles, wild eyes, a smear of day-old mascara. This isn't the thrill it once was. This is fear and exhaustion, and the creeping realization that I have no idea how I'll ever get out of this mess. He corners me in a darkened hallway at work. It's thrilling at first, the danger of it. But then his grip tightens, his whispered words become demanding. The thrill curdles into a tight knot of fear. Is this what I wanted? The control isn't exciting anymore. It's terrifying. We steal moments. A whispered call in the bathroom stall, a hurried rendezvous in his car. The frantic energy of it is both a lure and a burden. We're planning now, discussing how to be together and escape from the lies we've built. But even as I say the words, they feel hollow, a twisted fantasy I'm not sure I really want. My husband catches my eye across the dinner table. I see the love there, the unspoken bond of years. How did this happen? How did the boredom, the resentment, led me to risk destroying everything? He seems oblivious, but the guilt churns in my stomach. The life I've taken for granted suddenly looks unbearably precious. That night, I lie awake, the sheets heavy with sweat and dread. My phone feels like a ticking time bomb. One more text from him, one slip up with my husband, and this whole fragile house of cards will come crashing down. I'm drowning in the mess I've made, and I'm starting to think there's no way out. The weekend of my husband's business trip looms. He's gone, and a wave of conflicted emotions crashes over me. Relief, sickening guilt, and yes, anticipation for the stolen days ahead. It's a toxic mixture I don't know what to do with. I'm in my favorite coffee shop when I see her. His wife. She's sitting by the window, a book open but her eyes lost in the distance. There's a sadness about her I haven't noticed before, a subtle weariness. I want to slide away, pretend I didn't see her. But I don't, and that moment, the recognition in her eyes, makes me feel monstrous. He cancels at the last minute. A work emergency that just popped up. I swallow my frustration, but a twisting knot of doubt worms its way in. This has happened before. What if he's lying to me? What if he has someone else too? The paranoia is suffocating. You seem off, my brother says when he calls. His voice is hesitant, like he knows more than he's saying. His concern feels like sandpaper on my already raw nerves. He's right. I'm not the woman I was. I'm someone who lies and cheats and destroys. He reminds me what I'm in danger of losing. My husband's back, trying to be cheerful, to reconnect. I go through the motions smiling, making small talk. But inside I'm crumbling. He notices, of course. What's wrong? You've been distant lately. His eyes are worried, and all it would take is one confession for this whole charade to explode. I almost say it, but fear clamps down on my throat, and the lie tumbles out instead. My best friend corners me in the hallway at work. Her voice, usually warm and understanding, is cold now with the strain of disappointment. This isn't you, she says, her eyes filled with a hurt that cuts deeper than any accusation. What the hell are you doing? Her words, finally harsh and direct, break through the fog of denial. For the first time, I see the ugliness of my actions reflected back at me. I dream of my husband, asleep beside me. In my dream, his face collapses into sorrow, tears streaming silently. He knows. He knows about everything. I wake with a gasp, a crushing wave of regret and self-loathing washing over me. He takes me to that overpriced bar again, the one with the dim lighting and expensive cocktails. I'm falling for you, he says, and his hand covers mine on the table. It's what I crave, and now it feels like a noose tightening around my neck. The thrill has turned to poison. I want to scream, to confess, to run, but instead, I just nod and force a smile. He's bolder now, impatient. Leave him, he says as we walk along the riverside, his voice low and insistent. Be with me? The weight of it hits me hard, and something in me snaps. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep hurting the ones I love. Can't keep lying. I can't be this person. But what's the alternative? Do I confess everything? Shatter the world I've built? Do I run away from both of them? Become someone I don't even recognize in an effort to escape my own mess? I'm at a crossroads, and all the paths look terrifying. For the first time, there's no thrill to be found. Only the bone-deep fear of facing the consequences of so painstakingly creative. The words spill out of me in a rush. like a dam breaking after holding back a flood. I tell my husband everything. The lies, the meetups, the thrill that poisoned my soul. His face transforms before my eyes. Shock melts into rage, a red flush spreading across his cheeks, and then a terrible emptiness settles over his features. How could you? He spits the words out, each one a venomous sting. His voice is shaking, the calm man I thought I knew replaced by a stranger filled with disgust and pain. I try to speak, but it's useless. I've broken him irrevocably, shattered the trust that was the foundation of our lives. He leaves. The door slams, the sound echoing through the hollow house like a death knell. I collapse on the floor, sobs racking my body. There are no more secrets now, only the ashes of my life and the unbearable weight of my own monstrous actions. The days that follow are a blur of misery. Rumors swirl, fueled by half-truths and malicious whispers. People I once called friends turn away, their eyes filled with contempt. I become a pariah in my own town, the woman who betrayed, who destroyed. In desperation, I reach out to his wife. It's a pathetic attempt at penance, a feeble offering from the depths of my ruin. Surprisingly, she agrees to meet. In a quiet little cafe, we sit across from each other. There are no theatrics, no tearful declarations. Just two women broken, the shared devastation bridging the gulf between us. Her eyes hold more understanding than condemnation, and a sliver of twisted gratitude flickers through me. I'm not the only one suffering this terrible fate. Days bleed into sleepless nights. Tears flow freely, punctuated by moments of cold, gut-wrenching clarity. I look in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. This is who I've become. The liar, the betrayer. Every time I think I've reached rock bottom, a fresh wave of regret hits, dragging me further down. I reach for a lifeline, desperately seeking help. A therapist listens patiently as I spill out my poison, entangling the mess of guilt and pain. Her questions are scalpels, cutting through my shame to expose the raw wounds beneath. It's excruciating, but there's a flicker of hope that maybe, somehow, I can find my way back from this destruction. We try, my husband and I. We sit across from each other, the chasm between us vast and impossible to bridge. His eyes are haunted, the love extinguished. We try to talk, to rebuild, but the words are hollow. The wreckage of our marriage can be salvaged. The divorce is an ugly process, dissecting a life we built together into cold, legal terms. With each signature, a piece of my heart withers away. I watch as he moves out, taking with him a future we had planned for. I'm alone now, truly alone. The cost of my mistakes has never been so clear. Yet amidst the ruins, there's a stubborn flicker within me. I've survived this self-inflicted horror, and I won't let it crush me entirely. The healing will be slow, messy, and agonizing, but I resolve to face it head-on, not to erase my past, but to forge a future where my worst decision isn't my defining feature. My strength isn't flashy or heroic, but it exists. It's simply the choice, each morning, to try again, to fight the urge to let bitterness consume me whole. Time passes, leaving scars but also offering the slow balm of a life beyond the catastrophe. It's a life built on shaky ground, where simple routines become victories. Shopping for groceries without the sting of public judgment, taking a walk without the weight of guilt crushing my every step. I find a different job, in a town far enough away to offer the chance of a fresh start. Loneliness is my constant companion. Trust, once freely given, is a precious commodity now. Friendships are tentative, weighed against the risk of my past being unearthed. Some nights, the darkness closes in, and the old despair threatens to swallow me whole. I cling to the lessons learned with a fierce determination, a lifeline against those dangerous tides. I realize now that the thrill wasn't worth any of this, the hollow victories, the intoxicating dissection. It was excitement masquerading as love, a twisted path paved with bad choices, and a reckless abandonment of responsibility. The fallout was immense. Not just the loss of my marriage, but the shattering of trust in those closest to me. People wonder why I did it. Ask what was missing. There's no simple answer, no excuse to absolve myself. Boredom, curiosity, a toxic mix of ego and insecurity. It's a tangled mess. But I see, with brutal clarity, that the fault was entirely mine. No one forced me to lie, to cheat, to prioritize selfish desires over the sanctity of a life built with another. I won't say I'm redeemed, even after all this time. Redemption feels too grand a word. What I am is change. More cautious, more aware of the fragility of happiness. I measure myself by smaller benchmarks now, keeping a promise, resisting the urge to run when things get difficult, being honest with myself and those I come to care about. Will I ever love again? Truly and deeply? I don't know. It seems an impossible mountain to climb, fraught with the danger of old wounds and new fears. But I've learned not to underestimate resilience, the human capacity